Let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Thousands braved the rain to stand up for equality at the We the People March.
Across the street where you can see tents have been set up. There's preparations ongoing for the stage. They are getting ready for this event to kick off at about 10 o'clock. This is called the We the People National March. And what the organizers here say is that they are protesting recent laws and Supreme Court decisions that they say attack marginalized groups. Just a short time ago, I spoke with David Hogg, who gained some popularity after the Parkland massacre, spoke up very forcefully about gun safety and gun control issues. I also spoke with a trans influencer from Los Angeles who is here in town for this event. Her name Gia Gunn. She talks about what it's like living as a trans person in this political climate.
Thousands of protesters, dozens of partnered organizations and local leaders gathered at Esplanade Park in Fort Lauderdale Sunday as part of a national We the People rally and march hosted by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. A spokesperson for the organization said that clickers at the event counted 4,200 marchers who braved the midday rain to make their voices heard. Sunday's South Florida March was one of 4 happening across the country through AHF. We the People marches and rallies were also held in California, South Carolina, and Texas. Attendees said they wanted to make their voices heard on several issues, particularly those centered on civil rights. The marches came on the heels of several Supreme Court decisions making headlines, including one in which the court ruled that a Christian wedding website designer did not have to extend her services to a same-sex couple. Sunday's march also happened just one day after new laws took effect in Florida, including HB 543, no longer requiring Floridians to have a government-issued permit to carry a concealed weapon. A small group of counter-protesters could be seen in the park, as well as during the march in the city streets, donning shirts that read "Gun Save Lives" and carrying a flag that said "Come and Take It," with the image of a gun. But protests remained peaceful, with security and Fort Lauderdale police also in attendance. So I was there, and I have to give a big shout out to Sun Sentinel for putting me on the front page as I was marching before I got drenched to filth, right? But the organizations that were there were all the organizations that we love and that we support and that support us, plus women's organizations, Black organizations, Indigenous peoples organizations. There were so many incredible organizations that the rain didn't stop them from showing up and marching. It was just an incredible event. It was super powerful. Me and John walked for a while, and just the different people that came out. There were people in wheelchairs. There were people. There were just disabled people that just felt that they had to come out and let their voices be heard. I thought it was great. I have to give a big shout out to Ebony and all the folks over at AHF for everything that you did. The incredible speakers that you brought. Debbie Allen, you would have gagged. Debbie Allen was just incredible. Someone told me that Gia Gunn was there. I didn't see her. She didn't speak, so I have no idea, but I saw backstage pictures of her. So thank you for helping us. Thank you for supporting us. But it was really a wonderful event. One of our anchors, Harold Marrero, was also one of the key speakers. It was a well put together event, and they should really be proud. John, what do you think?
Oh my gosh, it was so powerful to be there, and I've covered a lot of rallies, and this one, I predicted that it would, and it did. It just felt different. There was real energy, and hopefully all the groups that came together will capitalize upon it. They will be able to say, okay, now we know about you, and we're going to use your guys' resource, and we're going to lend you our resources, because it's all about building on what we did that day. If we just go out there and say, oh, this was a great moment, and then do nothing to follow up, then it's a wasted day. But I don't feel that. I feel like there's some real momentum coming out of this, and that gives me hope. And special shout out to, I'm going to call them the Wheelchair Brigade, because it started pouring right before we started marching. And I still saw at least a dozen people either wheeling themselves or being pushed in their wheelchairs. They were not leaving. They were generally older, so they've been through the fight, and no shade if they'd have gone home, but they stayed. Yeah. God bless you. I love you.
And that gives me chills, because at that moment when I was bitching about the fact that I had just gotten a beautiful blowout the day before and it was ruined, then I look over with John and I'm like, what the hell am I bitching about? Wow.
Funny when you said beautiful blowout, I wasn't thinking.
It was really amazing to be there with so many like-minded people. That was incredible, because this isn't like seeing this in Fort Lauderdale as opposed to New York or DC or Chicago. This was incredible to see this kind of turnout. if there only had been a few less speakers, the march could have started sooner, and then perhaps avoiding the deluge that followed with the rain. But still, it was very exciting.
And David Hogg from Parkland,
Yes.
Survivor
Student,
Yes,
right?
yes.
He was a de facto, along with Debbie Allen, the keynote speaker. The way that it has, obviously an event like that's going to shape you, but the way he has turned it into something positive for him and positive for the community and for everybody who doesn't want to be shot.
You know, the number one
Yes.
thing I thought first in watching, I was in Colombia, but I watched pictures, I watched face, social media was interesting. The protester that Kerry signed in a march like this, that guns save lives. So this is on Sunday. It was Sunday.
Sunday morning, yes.
On Sunday morning, and today, as we do Queer News Tonight live, I think about that person carrying the sign, "Gun Save Lives." On Saturday and Sunday, 50 people in America were shot in mass shootings. Yeah, they save a lot of lives, and it's a reflection of how really morally and ethically
They're warped.
terrible a sign like that at an event like this
Yeah.
is. So make sure you know your enemy, because that's where you have to start. The other thing that I think is really interesting is I invite you to watch an interview that I've done on Unapologetically Queer. We published it last week in our broadcast with Ebony Crispin. She talks a lot. It's about a 40-minute interview, but she does more than I've ever heard her do before in talking about AHF's mission and why they would be involved in this. And they make the connection that all of the kind of issues that are affecting marginalized communities ultimately affect the healthcare that's their principal mission. So as a result, they're expanding their medical mission because of the other kinds of legislative and housing disparity and marginalized community issues that face, which I had never really heard before. And AHF, of course, is the giant in AHF. Or in HIV, and I thought that was interesting in helping architect this event. The other thing that I thought was interesting is she made it clear instantaneously that the We the People March is not a queer event. It's not an LGBT event. And I thought, in hearing her before the event, I thought, this is very odd that you would say that, because AHF is founded and a president is gay. It serves so many LGBT organizations. So I thought it was odd until I watch what they do, because their invitation to marginalized communities is, we in LGBT have the same kinds of issues that women have on their own decision-making of controlling decisions on their own body, or people of color, or faith diversity issues like Jewish faith and anti-Semitism that's going on, immigrants issues.
Undocumented, for sure.
And undocumented. And I think one of the things that I come away from this march, I'm sorry I couldn't be there, of course, but the one thing that I come away from is it's as close as we've come, which I think is really what I feel you're saying. It's not New York, Chicago, Washington. This is kind of strange because it's here, and what you thought it was going to be in Sentinel moment, and your observation. The reason you're in the Sun Sentinel photo, in my opinion, when I saw it, I thought bullseye first, but the reason why it was a bullseye is you're standing in a group and you clearly see it's Faye, but she has her fist in her arm in the air. That's the reason that picture was pretty, of course. But that's the reason that picture was there, because it was unusual for South Florida. You see a young woman with her arm in the air with a clenched fist saying, we're not going to take it anymore. That does not mean exclusively LGBT. It doesn't mean women. It doesn't mean immigrants. It doesn't mean faith diversity. It doesn't mean people of color. It means all of us.
Yep.
And that's what comes away from this march. It's a good start.
Yeah.
Now we want to see it over and over and over. We are Queer News Tonight. the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ+ community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.